But what I will say is, while I've enjoyed this show for its kind of standalone property so far, as it's just a thing over there, it hasn't. We got lots of stuff this week that really matters, and I'm curious if any of it's gone over your head.
Probably some of it has, but I think I love this week's episode. This episode was great. It was so hilarious. There were so many funny moments, and we finally got our boy.
We did.
Finally.
Okay, so at what point did you realise he was going to be Luke's lawyer?
I don't know if it was like only just like the court scene or just before. I'm trying to think at like what point it clicked. I think it clicked when he was sat in court on his own, and I was like,
and his lawyer wasn't already there.
Yeah, I was like, this is like some setup for somebody, and I was like, it's gotta. And then it clicked. I was like, is this gonna be? And this is something I think before the show started, we talked about the fact of whether we would get, because we knew Charlie Cox was coming back as Daredevil. I think we talked about whether we would get Matthew Murdock or we would get Daredevil. And I think we both said like there's a high chance we'd get Matthew Murdock before anything because it's lawyer v lawyer stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of clicked, and I was like, as soon as he walked in, I was like, yes.
When they mentioned the lawsuit, I was like, are we going to get him as a lawyer? And then, because there was a little bit in between, I was like, oh, maybe we won't. He's New York based after all. Maybe we won't. Maybe he comes in for a different reason. And then, like, I was certain when we cut to the courtroom and he was sitting there by himself, I was like, oh shit, it is going to be this.
Yeah, it didn't
so
really
my note for that was lawyer on lawyer action. And I feel like that quote could be used for a lot of this episode.
There was definitely some lawyer on lawyer action.
I have some thoughts. But the big thing from the court scene that stuck out to me was that we got confirmations that the Sokovia Accords had been repealed.
Yes.
That is huge, because there has been, and I know you're not as, you avoid this bit of the internet a bit more than me. There has been so much discussion based on different things that have happened in different shows as to whether it's like, oh, that breaks the Sokovia Accords. What's the fucking point of doing civil war and the Sokovia Accords getting signed if they're just going to ignore them and everyone thinks going to be as normal? Now we know they have been repealed.
Oh, okay.
During the blip, they got repealed.
I mean, it makes sense.
100% does make sense. By the sounds of it, this is my prediction of what happened. Half of everyone disappeared. The world went to shit with looting and rioting like it definitely would. And they were like, we need superheroes to help us here. And Heroes were like, no, you've made it impossible for me to do my job. Okay, we'll repeal that so you can just go back to helping. We trust your judgment. So they did.
Yeah, fair. That's probably the case. Do you know what I actually think this, like that being dropped, just like kind of dropped in there in this episode, it's probably Marvel just being like, okay, we're done with these people arguing on the internet about this. Let's just like confirm it in a show.
But so I understand that people are concerned about how they were going to handle Deadpool humor, and it was a partial valid concern. I think people were overreacting to it for sure, but I did understand like the base of that concern of like, I hope they get it right, because it is a difficult thing to balance. I lost all concern about how they were going to handle Matt's humor when he called out Leapfrog for lying, and he was like, don't ask me how I know he's lying. And the judge is just like, yes, he's obviously lying. At that point, I was like, okay, we're fine. We are absolutely fine.
There was a few points where it was like, we got the Daredevil humor that people have been like, oh, it can't be funny. It's like, but it was just like, any point that he was being funny felt like, they just felt natural. Like, it didn't feel like it was forced. It felt like it is exactly how Deadpool would be.
He didn't
Daredevil. I'm fucking doing it again this week.
The comedy we got from him during their Netflix show was very much like tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic comments. Like when Foggy's like, how do you always go for beautiful women? He's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, he knows exactly what Foggy's talking about, but he acts all coy and silly. It's that kind of stuff. And I do understand why people are a little bit concerned, and that's always valid. But the way people are harping on that, oh my God, they're going to make him do dumb jokes. Like, no, they're not. Matt Murdock is funny.
Yeah,
Matt Murdock is three things. He is brooding, he is funny, he is horny. They got all three of them in this show absolutely
We even got
flawlessly.
mention of him being broody.
Yeah, 100%. It was done so well.
It's like he's so easy to play into being funny because you've got a character who everyone thinks is blind, but he isn't blind. But he has to act like he is. Well, he's blind,
he is
but
blind.
yeah, you know what I mean, though. But like he can perceive the world as if he isn't blind.
Yeah, he can get around without seeming like a blind man if
But
he needs to.
he then has to pretend he is blind.
Yeah.
So it's like
it's just
him playing it up. It always comes across as funny because of like we know the situation.
Well, it's like, what was it? It was in one of the Netflix episodes where like he was there for a crime that he was obviously trying to stop but fucked up or something, and then one of the detectives like, we need your witness statement, and he just says, he's like, would you like me to describe how that sounded?
Yeah, and
that's funny.
Yeah,
that is a joke.
It's like he's just most of his jokes are revolving around the fact that he is essentially a disabled person.
Yeah, it's a little bit of sarcasm mixed with being an arsehole.
Yeah, he's just laughing about the fact that and taking the mick out of himself essentially most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they got that just right.
Yeah.
We got I really enjoyed the fucking interaction when they were getting ready to break into the warehouse.
Yes.
And you had the so we've got 10, 15 seconds each. I'll drop down. She's like, you want to spend half an hour taking guys out? And he's like, that's not how that maths works. Yeah. That's funny.
There was a couple of times where like she kept saying about you want to spend ages just taking them out one by one. It's like, this what? You really didn't count them properly. Like I also showed that kind of which he played into the fact that she doesn't know what she's doing.
Yeah, she's
like,
she's
you haven't done this before, and she's like, okay, good point, but that's not the point.
Yeah. I enjoyed him taking out the first few, and then them teasing us like, "Oh, hallway fight scene, hallway fight scene." And then as we're about to get it, she just fucking comes through. I was
like, even the way they were building that like tension up, I was like, she's either just gonna come around the corner like and clobber them, or there was that side door. I was like, are they just going to start walking forward and she's going to smash through the door? But no, she came from above and just crushed them.
Really funny. Definitely a bit of a cock tease. I was like, yeah, hallway scene, woo! And then they just took it, but it was really good.
I'm sure they'll save that.
I really enjoyed her like being a lawyer while breaking into there. She's like, I'm here as your lawyer still. Let him go. So that we can do this properly and we can try and get. And they're fucking discussing like tactics for how to get him the lightest sentence possible while beating the shit out of his goons.
The funnier thing, like the funny part was, she went in and she broke the rope or whatever was on the designer guy, and then she's there just discussing with Leapfrog. Like, she's not doing anything. Just in the background, you've got Daredevil just bouncing from goon to goon, just beating them up, and she just stood there having a conversation like nothing else is going on. And then Matt's like offering his like legal speak, and then it all just ends with like the last goon decides to go. He's like, well, everyone's getting beaten up by Daredevil. I'll just go whack She-Hulk with a baseball bat. And she's just like,
what could go wrong?
Did you really think that was gonna work? Like, what was your logic?
I did enjoy the discussion about goons versus henchmen as well.
Yes. And she still called them hench goons and stuff.
Yeah, goonman. What was the other bit that I found really interesting? Oh, okay. So obviously the fucking Leapfrog tries to jump out the window, gets badly hurt. She calls the police. Yeah, deals with everything. Then goes up to the roof to see him. And then we get an interaction that leads to them going home together. Now, Daredevil is, don't get me wrong, he's a good Catholic boy. He's also a ladies' man. So I kind of saw this coming, especially when Jen was clearly into him.
Well, yeah, I think you mentioned it a while back.
I think I did say that it was a very high possibility.
You were like, in the comics, he's a horny bastard, so maybe we'll get some lawyer on lawyer.
Yeah, 100%.
So from the moment in the bar when they first like interacted after the court case, there was already like a bit of tension there, and you got the sense that Matt had like could tell from like a heartbeat or whatever. So when it was on
Yeah.
the roof and they were discussing, I was like, I know where this is going.
The entire thing was flirty as fuck.
Oh yeah,
Like and that's how it should be. Let's be completely clear here. They knew each other on a personal level first, and they clearly flirted a bit. And then Match was like, "Hey, she already knows who I am. I already know who she is. This is a cakewalk. These guys, these are, like I said, these are goons. They're just getting paid. They don't give a fuck."
well, there was also the fourth wall break when they're inside and Daredevil's like beating everyone up and doing lawyer talk, and then she just turns to the camera and goes, "This is really doing it for me."
Yeah. But my absolute favorite bit of that whole interaction was the fucking walk of shame
Yes,
afterwards. Him
yes,
walking on the grass with his boots and with
I
his
was
suit on.
dying.
Fucking brilliant.
I was
So,
like,
so funny.
they were showing outside, and I was just like, okay, morning after, and then he just walks in from the left of frame with just holding his boots and walking along in his suit. And I'm just like, oh shit, yeah, he won't have his clothes. He's having to do the walk of shame in his suit.
It's so good.
And the fact that a friend sees it and it's like, some guy in a devil suit was just doing the walk of shame.
I did like how they handled the end of the episode, like the beginning of the end of the episode, when Nikki comes in. She's like, "Is this not the end of the episode?" That
Yeah.
felt like it should have been the end of the episode. That was a very satisfying ending to
There
the
was
episode.
a lot of good fourth wall breaks this episode. Because there was that point where she's discussing, like, oh, this feels like it should be the end. And then she's like, but next week's the finale, so maybe there's still more for them to do.
Yeah.
And also, on the fourth wall stuff, do you not remember at the beginning of the episode, felt like you might appreciate this, she was like, they did previously on my show, and it was her voicing it. And I was like, Connor's going to notice that.
So I enjoyed the fourth wall breaks just before the gala, where she makes the Red Hulk reference. Very enjoyable, very little, nothing too big. Made me chuckle. But I do want to point out something, and I think this is one of these things that's going to get labelled as woke nonsense, but is actually a very valid point about society. What did they put up on the screen that should embarrass her? Yes, there was the revenge porn of him filming them being intimate, which is embarrassing, but she's not done anything wrong.
No.
She's a woman living her life who's been betrayed by someone she trusted. Yet these fucking incels, and I'm going to call them incels, who are out to get her, are acting like this must mean she can't be trusted to have superpowers. And like I know it kind of was double audioed in places, but you heard them say like power she stole from the Hulk. No, this was power that she unfortunately by accident had forced upon her, that she's being very responsible with. If we're being honest, of all of the superhero origin stories we've seen over the MCU, she has been the most responsible person after getting their powers.
Yes.
By far.
Yes.
And she's got very upset, very angry, ripped the screen down because she doesn't want people seeing this intimate part of her life, and she just found out she's been betrayed. And they're still acting like she's the bad guy. If people don't see the very obvious social commentary here of women will sometimes be lambasted for simply just existing, and they think that's woke bullshit, I'm sorry, lads, you're part of the problem.
Do you know what I also feel like it was leaning into like a cultural thing of in a way of, this may come across as a stretch, but hear me out. It kind of was leaning into the way that racism is often perceived. As in, like, as soon as she was getting angry, they just thought, Hulk getting angry, Hulk's gonna freak. Like they immediately compared her to when Bruce was losing his shit. The same way that people like a man of color gets angry, they're like, oh, it's all men of color.
Like, and how quickly people were there, it almost came across as they've actually had a unit prepared for her, following her around all the time, just waiting, just in case.
Yeah.
I do think you're right. There is definitely an element of that could be read into it. I'm not sure if necessarily that's what they were going for, but it's still a valid point, 100%.
I also picked up on that. Like, I 100% think her boss has always had that unit on speed dial or like in the background at all times ready.
Yeah.
Because while yes, currently very great thing publicly to have a She-Hulk lawyer, like, oh, this is great for us. but I'm gonna prepare myself for if this Hulk goes bad like the other Hulk.
Yeah. I also thought it was interesting. This is one of these things that I know for a fact is going to get thrown out as woke, which is just again stupid because it's a very valid political kind of not political societal commentary. The award ceremony,
Oh yeah,
female lawyer of the year. They call all the nominees up, and it's like you're just trying to tick a box.
yeah.
That why are they the best female lawyer of the year? They're all just fucking lawyers.
Well, it's also like if you're gonna pick, as soon as they called out Jen, everyone's like, "Oh, Jen's won. This is great," and then they carry on reading out names, and you immediately go, "Oh, they don't care about actually picking the best female lawyer."
No,
Whether
they
it,
just
whether
want
it should
to
be a
be shown
separate,
giving a female award.
whether it should be a separate award or not, like they can't even pick just one. They just want to give it. They're giving it to them all because they're just ticking a box. They don't really
Yeah.
care about actually picking one.
But it was also the question. It was like, oh, what's it like to be a female lawyer? The same as it is to be a male lawyer, just with more shit thrown on top. Because we're expected to, like for Jen, for instance, like we saw at the beginning, expected to dress a certain way for work, expected to work just as hard for half the recognition.
Yeah.
They're lawyers. Female has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it was very
And
much
I-
a dig at society and how society often does things.
100%. And it's a fucking valid point again.
Yeah.
But without a doubt, in my opinion, the funniest, best action, and most interesting episode so far.
Yes.
Maybe I'm even more excited for it because we got to see Daredevil back in full form again, and he was done really well. But I do think overall they just handled it really well.
I think we also got like the fact that we got She-Hulk in her superhero suit, and it kind of was like,
Which looks really good, by the way.
yeah, like everything kind of came together, and they used Daredevil as a way to like really finally show her off as a superhero.
Yeah.
Overall, it was a great episode, and there were so many funny moments.
It
I'm
really was.
interested to see where they take this for the finale,
So am I.
because immediately when she'd broken the screen and was freaking out, like she was having like a bit of a freak out, understandably, and obviously everyone then panics. It's like, I'm pretty sure in like one of the first episodes, Bruce mentions like that it only takes one moment for them to see you as a monster, or something like, or I'm sure it was in the first episode, but if it wasn't, it's definitely something Bruce has said in like one of the films or something. Like it only takes one moment for everyone to see me as a monster.
Yeah,
And it's like, it's when she did that, I was like, oh shit, this is that. Like everyone's now going to see her as a monster, not as what they have been seeing her as.
And I think that's all the intelligentsia guys wanted. They just wanted to ruin her reputation, and they knew they didn't actually have anything to do with that. They just had to get her to be upset and embarrassed and do something. And it's wrong. But I mean, the fact that I'm getting so like, oh, this is like unfair bullshit, shows that they've told the story right.
Oh yeah,
the story's told right if you can emotionally attach yourself to it, and that's what we're able to do.
I think they've done a really good job of actually staying very true to like very relatable cultural issues and not overdoing them, not like trying to push them in too much of like a woke way, as people say, which is like forced, but like actually doing it well.
Also, one thing that we forgot to mention last week is how positively it showed therapy.
Yeah.
A lot of the time in media, therapy is only shown as like a deeply troubled person just trying to like find a loophole to get away with something. Whereas for like a lot of people, therapy is just like a mental health tune-up. Just go in, talk about some stuff, work through some stuff, and it just helps keep you sane. And that's kind of how it's portrayed there. And that was something important we should have brought up last week.
I feel like I'm expecting the finale is gonna have, obviously it's gonna now have to address this situation of what happens to Jen because she freaked out and how people react to it. There's got to be some added situation to the blood, and is Josh gonna re-show up as a figure, like reveal himself as what he's actually done? And are we gonna get Hulk back?
I've got a feeling the end of this show is going to set up Captain America.
Okay, I can see that.
With everything that's happened, intelligentsia, which is, or in the comics was, like I said, a way for supervillains to share information,
Mm-hmm.
and the leader being confirmed to be in New World Order, which is a Hulk villain.
Mm-hmm.
I would be very surprised if something that comes from this doesn't end up creating a scenario for the next Captain America film.
I wonder if we'll get like just a scene of Josh delivering the blood
Maybe.
to the leader or something. I do think there's going to
Also,
be some setup there for that.
you know how basically every week, other than like 2 or 3, they've done like a brand new like logo for the show with a different title or whatever. Like we had Just Jen and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I am going to make a prediction for next week's right now. It will be Savage She-Hulk.
Oh.
Because that's what She-Hulk initially debuted as in the comics. After she got angry and was like a little bit more panty, like a animal, and her hair went a bit more frizzy, she didn't actually say another word. She just made grunty noises. And playing on that whole idea of everyone now views her as a monster and as a savage, I think the title for next week, the title card next week, will be Savage She-Hulk. And that is a fun little prediction that means nothing if I get it right other than bragging rights.
I'm going to predict, I don't think we're going to see any more Daredevil now, and
I don't think so, but I think we actually got enough in this episode of him.
Yeah.
It was a really intense, condensed burst.
I think he will show up if there's a season 2 of She-Hulk, he's going to show up again because of the way that he was like, oh, I'm back off to New York tomorrow, but maybe next time I'm here or something. Like definitely set up like we'll reconnect sort of situation.